Hi, welcome to Flowers, Pearls, and Tiaras with Ava & Co. Today we're going to be doing a demonstration video on how to do some cute earrings with resin and pressed flowers. And here's one of the finished products. I'm going to be making two different ones today. But first, let me show you all of the supplies that you're going to need to do this jewelry making. The first thing that we are going to need for the jewelry making process is you are going to need some pliers. I do like a strong, like a little flat head plier, and then also a small jewelry making needle nose plier as well. And then you will need a deburr tool, which will help you get rid of some of the overflow of resin after it dries. Need some scissors, some tweezers. You'll need your jewelry hooks. You'll also need some jump rings. I use this size of jump rings for the type of empty bezel jewelry I'm doing today because it's not going to be the thick resin, so I don't need the larger one. And the really, really teeny ones are just going to be too small. So I will have the size in the comments of which ones are appropriate. You need now for the actual resin portion, you are going to need some dried flowers, and you will need a UV light. I love my Dremel tool, and then some UV resin, which the Kiss Roll is my absolute favorite. We'll also need a heat gun to get rid of any of the bubbles, and this jewelry making tape, since we are working with the empty bezels instead of a silicone mold. We also need a backing for our earrings. Now, getting started, the first thing that you're going to want to do is take the tape and measure out a little bit for about how many pieces you're going to be working with. Okay, cut it and just make sure it's nicely adhered. I love working on parchment paper because it makes sure everything stays nice and clean. Okay, once you have the tape down, you are going to take the jewelry bezels and you are going to put them on the tape. Now what the tape does is it is going to allow the resin to dry, and then once the resin dries, we flip it. We're going to cure the back side of it, and then it just falls right off the tape. Okay. For safety purposes, I use a glove on one hand, and this is the hand that I'm going to do it. If you're doing anything with touching the resin, just to keep it off of your skin. Some people, the resin can cause skin irritation. Okay, so let's get started here. We're going to start by filling a very light layer of resin inside each of the bezels. Now the bezels are going to move around. It takes a little getting used to, but when you get the correct hand movement, you'll minimize the moving of the bezels. But just remember, every time that bezel moves, a little extra resin is going to seep out, and we're going to have to clean it up. So you really want to make sure we're getting to the very, very edge of the bezel. Okay. Now I'm going to fill the second one up. I'm going to put a dot, a large dot, and then you just move it around. I personally just move it around with the tip of the resin. You can move it around with popsicle sticks. but then I just feel that's another tool that has resin that's laying around. And if you touch the resin, it is very sticky. I'm gonna fill up the other two. Gravity will do some of the work for you. So like the second one, that very last one, I just poured in. Gravity will help me out a little bit before I have to make sure. Okay. Now I see on my first one right here, I've got some seepage, but that is nothing to be alarmed about. It's very easy, and I'll show you how to remove it. The one thing you really want to make sure is that you actually have gotten the resin to the end of the bezels. Now I'm going to take my heat gun, and the heat gun, what it does is it pops any of the bubbles, but you don't want to get too close. If you get too close, you are going to spread the resin everywhere and you're going to make a big mess. So I always go about, I'd say 6 inches up, and I just lightly go over until I see the bubbles pop. Okay. Blew some of my flowers around. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my flowers with the tweezers, and I'm going to place it right in the middle. You can work on that placement. It doesn't have to be perfect. It does move around. And now I am going to do these pink ones. Now the pink ones, I am going to have to trim down to size. So just move it around to wherever I want it. I don't like that bigger part of the flower, so I'm going to pull it off. A little too much stem that time. Now on my pink ones, I added a little bit of greenery. I think this one's actually kind of cute. It's got a little bit of the, I don't know if I like the pink greenery. So this one I'm gonna have to chop down to size a little bit. And then another little smaller one. Let's see here. You have to be very gentle with it. They're breaking on me there. Okay, perfect. Okay, so once you have the flowers where you want them, you're gonna take your UV light. My UV light is from Resin Earrings, and I really like this light because it moves. And then this part also expands depending on the size of your project. If you do a 1 click, it just stays on until you turn it off. And if you do a 2nd click, which I don't ever use that one, puts it on a timer. So I'm just gonna let this sit here. I usually do it when you do not have any kind of glitter or anything. It really only takes 2 minutes before I am ready to do the next step, which the next step is gonna be, we're gonna coat it again with resin. So I let it go for about 2 minutes. And once we are complete, we'll do that next coat of resin. So while we're waiting, I can show you some of the pieces that are already made. And if you see what I mean, you've got that little resin overflow, and that's what I'm gonna show you how to get off. We can work on that right now while we're waiting. You can take a deburr tool and we just pull it off gently. And it's kind of like slicing it off, and it cleans it up for you. So I'm just gonna clean this piece. That to the side, and may not have been quite 2 minutes, but like I said, this does cure pretty fast, and we're gonna be curing it again in a minute. So I turn my light off, move it out of my way, get that resin again, and I'm gonna resin over the flowers in that first layer. Now when you're resining over flowers, before you hit that light, you need to make sure that the resin has stayed completely on the flower, because sometimes I find if you do not coat it enough, parts of the flower will like kind of pop out, and then you have to do another layer. And you can't just fill in that one hole, you have to fill in the entire piece again. You really want to be careful that you're covering the entire flower. And it's important that that first layer is very thin, where you have enough space to resin over the flowers. Because the flowers, even though they're pressed, they're not going to be perfectly flat. Like this pink one does have some parts of it that poke out. But that jewelry bezel stops that overflow. I'm gonna take a look at it from a few different angles just to make sure that I have it. Pull my heat gun again. Time to cure. Now this time when I cure, I'm gonna let it sit for a good 5 minutes and walk off, go do some things around the house, and then come back and we'll flip it over. All right, so now that was about 5 minutes, and I've already kind of did a little touch test, and it's not tack anymore. So the next thing that we have to do is I am going to pull the tape up, flip the pieces over, and we're gonna let that cure for about another minute or two. All right, so now we've waited enough time, and the back of the jewelry is completely hardened. So what we're going to do is you just peel the tape off, and the pieces will just come right off. If you feel any resistance at all, that probably means it's not cured. And if you do take these off too quickly, it will ruin the piece. So let me just put this to the side. Now, here are our pieces that are done. And now we're gonna actually take them and turn them into finished pieces of jewelry. Now, I don't like to work with my pieces until they have been cured for a little while, just to avoid any fingerprints that could get stuck on them. So I'm just gonna pull those to the side, and we can work on the pieces that I have over here that are unfinished. So the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna look for any overflow of that resin, and you're gonna take your deburr tool, and you see right there, this is like the sharper side, and it's basically shaving off any excess resin. So you're just gonna do that. Now the resin is clear, so I find it doesn't have to be perfect, but it does have to be trimmed enough where it's not a complete obvious overflow. And those little pieces of overflow, I'm also running my finger around to make sure that there are no jagged edges as well. Let's see here. This one looks, I will try and do this one a little bit where you can see what it's like when you have a little bit bigger overflow. It's going to take a little bit more time to deburr it off. This one moved while I was making it, so there's quite a bit of overflow. But like I said, no issue. It's just going to take a little bit longer to create the earring. That up a little bit more. And as you can see, that's the nice part. When you get it and it pulls the rest off for you because it was stuck on the metal. So that one just wanted to help me out there today. And then again, I'm holding it up to the light, trying to find any obvious. Perfect. And you see sometimes if it's close enough to the metal, it'll chip off instead of making the little slices. You do want to make sure, I've never ruined the metal, but you do want to make sure you're not running this on the metal too much, because then you could possibly scratch it. I have never done it, but it's logical to think that you could. There we go. And the nice thing about the deburr tool is it will smooth it for you. Sanding is not my favorite because sanding kind of takes that sheen off of it. And I know there's ways you can get the sheen back on. That is definitely something I have not played around with. Now, when you are working with flowers or resin at all, it's one thing if you are going to sell these to make sure your customers know that these are handmade pieces. And there are going to be variations in the way they look, variations in color, variations in the way the flowers look. And there is also, it is to be expected, unless you are going to be painstakingly doing these over and over again, that you will have some sort of air bubbles. Like this one right here. No matter what we did, I caught it at the right time. We used the heat gun, but then there must have been a air bubble behind the little flower, and then it came out. Perfect. Okay. So now to actually make the earrings, when you use these little tiny bezels, I feel like when I use my larger ones these are a little thicker, the resin doesn't run into the holes. But these geometric ones, the resin ends up running into those holes. So now I have to drill it out. And yes, I do understand it is best practice to use a vise, but I'm not using a vise. So on my Dremel, you have to buy a special piece. I believe it's called a chuck. I would have to check again to put in the Dremel where you can use your drill bits. It's a super easy find at a Home Depot, and I'm sure that they sell them on Amazon too. And I'll make sure I drop that link. The only thing I do not like about my Dremel is when I turn it on, Well, the battery's dead. So, let's go fix my Dremel battery. All right, now that my Dremel is charged, let's try that again. So, the Dremel, I really like this tool. The only thing I don't like about it is when you turn it on, it defaults to 15, which is way too fast for what we're doing. So I bring it down to 5. Now when I do this, I hold the Dremel in my right hand, I hold my tool in the other, and I bring my piece to the drill. And then I go in and out a few times to re-drill that little hole. Now I'm not drilling the whole thing out. I'm just drilling enough of a size that my jump ring is gonna fit into it. Okay. So now we have drilled out our holes. So what I do is I take this piece here and I turn it. I do this on all my jewelry pieces because then the piece is going to face forward and not to the side. So I'm gonna do this to 4 earring hooks. Okay. Just a little teeny turn. There we go, and now your piece will face forward instead of to the side. So now I take the jump ring. I like my flat nose pliers because these are, I think they're, my husband actually got them for me, so they're not necessarily jewelry making ones, but they've got ridges, which are really good for gripping. These slide all over the place. I use them to help me turn, but this pair is the pair that is holding my piece for me. So I'm going to take the jump ring, take the piece, and stick the jump ring through the hole that we just drilled. Okay, sometimes it can fight you a little bit. Okay, now it is important when you are putting the hook on to make sure you know which of your piece is facing forward. So I know that the forward part of my earring is here, facing me, when I've looked at it. So when I put my hook on, I'm going to make sure that the back is facing the back of the piece. And yes, many times I'm going too fast. I'll do it wrong, and I have to pull my jump ring apart. So now I'm gonna twist until you feel a light click. That light click means that you have tensioned your jump ring and your earrings are not gonna fall apart. Okay. I always put it on the backing. A little stopper, earring back. Okay, and now time for the second one. So I'm gonna do that again. I'm gonna take my jump ring. I'm gonna put it on my grippy pliers. I'm going to find the hole, put my jump ring through the hole. This time I notice the way I'm holding it, that the front is facing you. So I'm going to make sure that when I put my earring hook on, that the back of the earring is facing the back of the piece. Take my helper pliers, turn, small click, and done. And here's that piece that is just finished. Now for the pink ones. This piece, which is complete. So now you have made 2 beautiful jewelry pieces with pressed flowers. Doesn't take that long at all. You can even make different sizes. I haven't drilled them yet. And then this is another really, really, really cool piece here. I like the bezel on that one too. So I'll drop all of the links below where you can get started on making your own resin jewelry with flowers. Just remember to like and subscribe, and never forget that life is always better with flowers, pearls, and tiaras.